We are going to do the ITERS overview today. So this one is more specifically for children birth to age 3. And as you think about that age, it has to be one of the biggest 3-year gaps and developmental differences that there is. So the challenge is utilizing this one tool to assess all those different age ranges to the best of our ability. So I have to say that's probably the biggest challenge.
I would agree.
So I'm Linda Franklin, work at Clayton, same as before. I know all the ERS tools, I'm reliable in all of them. I also do all the class tools. I spent about 6 to 7 years working at Qualistar as an assessor. And then previous to that, I was a center director for about 15 years. Did everything from work in the classroom to cook lunch, drive the van, plumb the toilets all by 10 o'clock. So, been there, done it all the ages. So, that's me.
I'm Connie Norgan, but other than that difference, our backgrounds are pretty much the same. So, about 2 years at Clayton, Qualistar before that, center director before that, wore all those different hats. And certified in the same tools. We also have CPSI, so that's the Certified Playground Safety Inspector. So if you need your playgrounds audited, we can do that.
Right. So we thought we would go over the same intro video that talks a little bit about the tool and the rationale again about scoring, just so we get the mindset for infants, toddlers, and how they're a little bit different than some of the other age groups.
Good morning, sunshine boy. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Say good morning.
It is very challenging to provide high-quality group care for infants and toddlers because each child needs a great deal of personal attention in order to thrive. The child care setting must meet each child's need for protection of health and safety, activities to promote learning, and warm, supportive interaction. A reliable, valid means of measuring quality can help programs as they seek to meet the needs of this vulnerable age group. The Infant-Toddler Environment Rating Scale, revised edition, called the ITERS-01, is an update of the original ITERS, which has been widely used as a quality measure for research and program improvement. Environment is defined broadly in the ITERS-01 to include the organization of indoor and outdoor space, the schedule of routines and activities, and the interpersonal interactions among staff, children, and parents. The ITERS-01 is designed to assess the quality of group programs serving infants and toddlers from birth through 2 1/2 years of age. The scale is designed to work in many different settings, including those serving culturally diverse populations and in inclusive programs. There are 39 items organized in 7 subscales: space and furnishings, personal care routines, listening and talking, activities, interaction, program structure, and parents and staff. Each item is a 7-point scale with indicators for 1, inadequate or poor care, 3, minimal or custodial care, 5, good or basic developmental care, and 7, excellent or enhanced developmental care. The items also contain notes for clarification and, in some cases, questions to get information to score indicators that may not be easy to observe. Let's take a closer look at an item. For example, number 5, display for children. For each level of quality, there are several indicators showing what to look for. Each indicator is numbered. These numbers correspond to the score sheet, where you will mark each indicator as yes, no, or not applicable. Some indicators, such as 3.1, need additional information, which you will find in the notes for clarification. Some indicators, such as 3.2, have examples to illustrate what you might see in the environment to score the indicator yes. Other examples that meet the requirement of the indicator are also acceptable. If an indicator may be scored as NA, not applicable, this will be noted as you see here on indicator 7.4. Also note that this item has a suggested question for indicator 7.3 to ask when the information is not observed. Now let's look at the score sheet entry for item 5. The score sheet provides a convenient way to record a rating for yes, no, or NA for each indicator. Based on the indicator ratings, you will be able to circle a quality score of 1 through 7. Space is also provided on the score sheet for your notes. When scoring an item, always start reading from 1, inadequate, and progress upward till the quality score is reached. Ratings are to be assigned in the following way. A rating of 1 must be given if any indicator under 1 is true and scored yes. Even if some indicators above 1 are true, the item must still receive a quality rating of 1. Remember, indicators under 1 describe inadequate care that compromises a child's development. A rating of 2 is given when all indicators under 1 are not true and are scored no, and half or more of the indicators under 3 are true and scored yes. A rating of 3 is given when all indicators under 1 are scored no, and all the indicators under 3 are scored yes. A rating of 4 is given when the requirements of 3 are met, and half or more of the indicators under 5 are scored yes. A rating of 5 is given when the requirements of 3 are met, and all indicators under 5 are scored yes. A rating of 6 is given when the requirements of 5 are met, and half or more of the indicators under 7 are scored yes. A rating of 7 is given when the requirements of 5 are met, and all indicators under 7 are scored yes. Notice here that indicator 7.4 is scored NA, or not applicable. Indicators that are scored NA are not counted when determining the quality rating for an item. Before proceeding with the video observations, stop the tape and complete part 1 of your video guide and training work.
All right.
So the one thing in the video is it says it goes to 2.5, but we know that it goes to 3 now. So, just not an updated video.
Sorry, we don't have any chocolate.
Hopefully you ate your cookie and it was good.
Because that's all you get.
These are the hints for ITERS, which are helpful. So general definitions, you can also find these in your book. These are the things that come up most often or that you need to know the most about.
So how many of you have been using the ITERS tools? Right. What do you find most challenging about the ITERS tool? Much of the day.
Much of the day.
That's not challenging for the tool, that's challenging for the providers.
Well, and keeping track of, making sure.
Exactly.
That's what's tough.
Keeping track of keeping track.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Every program I've had that has their rating done, that's their problem as much of the day.
Okay.
So,
Right. So that's actually, of course, one of the things we're going to talk about. One of the main terms. Who has a good definition of how to describe much of the day?
Isn't it like anytime the children are awake, it has to be no more than 20 minutes of the waking time? Or no less? Hard? Am I right?
That's part of it.
Okay.
So the idea is pretty much anytime children are awake and able to play, that they have access to materials. They don't have to have access to all the materials. You have those children who it's the Monday after the 3-day weekend and they were home being held the whole weekend. It's gonna take them a little bit longer to be ready and able to play than it would some other children. And we understand that.
That's the piece to keep in mind is that awake and ready to play. Because if somebody's teething, maybe they're not ready to play. So, it's okay.
Another way to describe that much of the day is we often see it being a challenge for teachers in the infant rooms. And it usually comes into play with those non-mobile babies. So we think of much of the day, a good analogy for that is like a swimming pool. So if you're in a swimming pool, and in the swimming pool, there's the balls and there's the floaties. If you're the child in that pool, the odds of one of those toys either coming your way or you getting to them is much better than you sitting on the sidelines in your lounge chair looking at all those toys in the pool. So you want those kids in the pool, in the action.
So containment devices, equal lounge chair.
Do we all know what we mean by containment devices? Yeah. Swings, bouncies, exercisers, high chairs, the chairs where they can get themselves in and out of, but then we strap them in. You just contain them again. So we understand for safety's sake, sometimes they need that, but there needs to be the awareness on the teacher's part that if they're done eating, they need to go play, not, oh, just a minute, I'll get to you, while they're bored and they're squiggling out of their chairs and they're trying to move out
And
because
it ends up
they are
not being a
done.
minute.
No,
It's much
No.
longer than a minute.
and the teachers know who to leave in that chair, and they know why they're leaving them in that chair. And again, that's not the best thing for the children, so.
And sometimes it's that just really mellow baby that is happy in the boppy doing nothing. And everybody else is pretty demanding. And so it's pretty easy to leave that compliant child on that boppy with not a whole lot, and 20 minutes passes like that. So,
So like if you go in and you see a classroom that has containers.
Containers.
I mean, like we can tell them that they shouldn't be there, but lots of them still have them. How, they just don't need to be in those things for very long. We need to tell them that.
so if we look at it from what's best for a child, what's best for children? What's best for children is being able to move their bodies, so especially young children, so that they can figure out, how do I roll over, how do I crawl, how do I start pulling up? So what's best for children? So while it probably is best for us to sometimes have a containment device, because we have 6 or 8 children crawling around and we might need to contain somebody. At the end of the day, what the tool is looking for is what's best for the child. So how can we meet that? And if you're gonna have a containment device, then what's your system for paying attention to how long children are in them?
So what about some of them have, I'm sorry I'm bringing this up, because I get these questions and I don't know
No,
the
it's a
answers,
fun
but-
That's what.
And you know, you're amongst your peers, these ladies have the same dilemmas and pushback that you get too, so.
Some of the infant rooms have children from 6 weeks to 1 year old. So you've got your 4-month-old that doesn't move and your 11-month-old that's climbing over them and everything. So they want some sort of a place to put the non-mobile babies so they don't get ran over. And I don't know what to tell them. I mean, they don't want to fence them off, because some of them, that's what they want. They want like a fence that.
Mhm.
And
You
I'm
put
like,
them in the big playpen.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
I'm like, that's not, and so like, there's some like little round things that kind of keep the crawlers away. I keep encouraging those, but do you have any ideas on
Well,
what's
I think
best?
safety is a valid concern.
Uh-huh.
And we do want peer interaction, so we don't want them completely blocked off from their peers. So there's that. But the other piece about non-mobile infants is not necessarily that they're moved around everywhere, but that things are offered to them. So there's also that piece where they have some flexibility with making sure they have a system in place that helps them to regulate
But
that.
if they're in that little round donut thing with it.
Things can be brought to them.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, I think, maybe it's just our nature as, mothers or women or whatever, but we have to protect the little ones because we think they can't protect themselves. But if maybe that mindset is switched and maybe we're focusing on those guys that are pulling up and crawling around, that we're giving them those materials in the room so they can be directed and have that physical outlet that they need, that those younger babies don't really need right now. So instead of taking them away from the little ones, say, let's go over here to something that's more appropriate for you. And once they hit that 12-month age, once you start using the tool, you realize that they are technically toddlers. Toddlers technically require more developmentally advanced toys and materials. Climbing, the blocks, the foam blocks. Doesn't have to be your wood unit blocks that they're going to kill somebody with, but just a soft block so they can do stacking, developing more of their skills.
What we see a lot of the time is that they don't have those additional materials. And so then what else is left to play with but the non-mobile infants? So if you give me a non-mobile infant as my choice, I'm gonna choose that. So, there's some of that.
The other thing I found to be successful is to focus on those older children. Their next transition, of course, is the toddler room. Well, the big thing when they go to the toddler room is they get to go outside. Why not find some way to work with the management so that maybe when the toddlers go outside, that my two that are getting ready to transition can go with them. That'll help wear them out. Developmentally, it gives them the stimulation that they need, and they might leave your little babies alone. So
there's lots of pieces, I think, to that you have to look at.
Well, those are some great ideas. I wrote them down.
Yeah.
you guys have any other ideas? Because you're the ones out there too, working with the
Sometimes you see
providers and
things,
teachers.
your
Just a few
utility.
things, just getting people to think differently.
Mhm.
Well, the one program I'm talking about, they want a new swing and they want a new rocker chair, and they
Just say
want
no.
all this, they want more container stuff, and I'm like
Mhm.
going, well, that's not developmentally.
So maybe we need to flip it
Right.
around and say, well, how do you intend to use that? And why do you think that's beneficial?
Mhm.
Why is
What's
that
the child
beneficial?
gonna get out of that? How will that benefit the child?
Mhm.
Because we're here to benefit children.
And when you have all those containers, they start taking up play space.
Uh-huh.
So there's nowhere for them to crawl, or, because it's got containers and
Mhm.
contraptions everywhere.
Yep, exactly. It takes away your ample really quick.
Yeah.
Whereas a blanket, you can get 2 blankets,
Yeah.
2 babies on the floor in the space of 1 swing. So.
And then, so, that swimming pool thing we were talking about, so you've got several non-mobile babies, but there's a teacher on the floor and there's non-mobile babies around, and the teacher can reach items, the teacher can talk to babies. You don't have to have all this other stuff. The teacher is there and they have that swimming pool effect, because now they can talk about all these different things. They can bring the doll out or read a book to 2 kids, or, the older toddler wants to read, great, set that toddler in your lap. Well, the other little babies are gonna get that book the same, and they're gonna get that language. And so there's lots of ways that can happen, and I've seen some really great programs where they've been on the floor with all those non-mobile babies, offering those kinds of things, and that's been a really good way to make sure they get what they need.
As far as the tools goes, I personally like doing the ITERS observations the most because I feel that I'm less focused on counting the materials, first of all. And granted, we're spending more time watching the routines, but looking at the environment, there's more opportunities to see whether it be the supervision, so the kids know when one teacher's over here changing diapers and the other one's over here doing the meal, then they can have a heyday with their friends. And they're pushing stuff over and they're getting into trouble. So that environment, the placement of equipment, kids are smart. They figured that out. But I feel as an observer, I can really see where the problem areas are, whether it's room arrangement or it's usually not that they need more toys or they need another rocker in their room to take up all that space.
So this observation can be a really good way to key into that kind of thing. And we talked a lot about the infants and much of the day, but the other piece for much of the day that we sometimes see with older children is the wait times, or being confined but in a different way. So we're gonna do all the diapers at the same time, so everybody is gonna do group books. It's a mistake, but that's what people do. And so, you know, sometimes we create our own problems when we do those kinds of things. So thinking about those routines and how long, what are we doing when it's time to go outside? What else can we do so that we're not taking 8 minutes in line and, you know, adding these times together throughout the day when we're doing hand washing and all. So with older kids, that's what we'll see a lot of the time that helps them, has them miss that much of the day pieces, those week times.
Yep. All right. So we got that much of the day, but we'll still continue to talk about it.
That's a lot of stuff.
But let's go over some of the other definitions that we have in the ITERS tool. One again is that accessible. So for those infants and toddlers, those things, even up here, not accessible. If it's not at their eye level, they're not gonna want it. They're not gonna grab up there to get that stuff, not accessible. And those babies, they need stuff way down, way down there.
Oh, gosh.
And look,
It's always that.
that's why I hate wearing my name tag.
Name tags are dangerous.
We alluded to it earlier, but lids on containers. Those are truly control devices for the teachers. Because they don't want the mess, they don't want them dumping, which toddlers are the dumpers, we all know that. So as a teacher, then put less materials in your buckets. Instead of 20, give them 10. And then, of course, help them with the cleanup. But I've had children come to me in an observation with a bucket with the lid on because they couldn't get it. And then they were sitting there dropping it to try to get it to pop open in the odd chance that they could get those musical instruments out of there. So beware of your lids.
It's always the musical instruments, right?
It's always
The good thing about infant and toddler rooms is a lot of times you have things that make all of those musical without having the musical instruments, and you still can get credit for a lot of those things. So you don't have to have the big set like everybody's trying to figure out what to do in
Right.
the preschool room when it's.
And you also have those other toddler rooms that are for your 12 months to 2.5. So you would hope that the teachers will be starting to set up the environment so those 2.5-year-olds can get some art materials themselves and maybe go draw. Okay, so you have out basic crayons, and what do you put them in? You put them in the jars with the lids. The lids are like as big as my hand. Oh, they can get those. No, they can't get those. They can't open those. The teachers can barely open those. So be aware of your containers. You know, someone says something?
I don't think so for that age.
Anything else about much of the day? Again, it's like substantial portion of the day. If much of the day, and each child has their own like 20 minutes, as we kind of talked about. So the most challenging part is documenting it. I usually use my back page to document, especially like the non-mobiles of where they are. And it's usually, you know, you can't put, you don't always know all their names, so you know, pink pants, flower shirts, stuff like
That's how
that.
you start.
It's just really a bummer when they change their clothes in the middle and you
Yes,
miss
you have to
that.
be
As I move back
Where
to
did pink pants go?
fall
Where
baby.
you go on Halloween and
Fall baby.
everybody's wearing orange and pumpkins. It's
Mhm.
terrible.
So your tracking system is very important, but yes, each child kind of has their own 20 minutes.
And if one child misses it, then everybody's gonna miss it.
Yep. Yep, and all those indicators, provisions for relaxation, books, fine motor, physical play, music, blocks, drama, peer, maybe schedule and free play.
I guess the other thing to be careful with this would be if they take walks. And walks are fine, but you need to pay attention to how long the walks are. And if children are engaged in the walk, because once they're not engaged in the walk, then we should stop, because that's gonna count against that much of the day. And I've had people recently tell me that they go on walks for as long as an hour. I just made that same face. An hour? But they were serious, and that's routinely what they do, and that's a really long time for children to be strapped into.
How long can you engage a toddler for an hour?
Right.
Yeah, look, we all know. We've tried doing it. It's exhausting.
Yeah. So just keep that in mind, how long that is lasting.
Yep.
So,
And again, weather permitting doesn't change. We expect that the toddlers get outside, of course, and the infants, for at least a little bit between that 20 and 90 degree time.
And there were a couple people that weren't here earlier when we talked about that. So really the expectation is that children would be taken out every single day. So regardless of what the weather is, they're going to be dressed appropriately. So there's no bad weather, only bad clothing. But we also have some common sense about it. So if we have, 2-month-old babies, then we're going to pay attention to. But the intent is that all children get that fresh air and physical activity every day.
And did that degree range change every 30 degrees? No, it was always 20.
Some schools may implement a 30 degree thing, but the weather permitting has always been the 20 to 90. But then too, we know if you're in that toddler room, maybe your younger ones, just the parents are just not having it. But others have brought their clothes, they're dressed to go. Why not figure out a way to split up and someone take out some of those kids that are ready? Because in the end, we want what's best for all those children, and making those older ones suffer because two can't go out, is that the right thing? So, just keep those things in mind. It's not always feasible, but lots of times there's a thing outside the box and it can happen.
Alright, we talked about ample space the last time. So ample space was more than what you would need for everybody that is enrolled in the classroom. So all of the highest number that can be there, plus the teachers. So if we think about sufficient space, that's that licensing kind of area that so what you're licensed for. And then ample is more than enough space. So lots of room to move around. And I don't know that we see ample space as often.
As a problem, or?
I think most rooms are fairly small. So.
And then when you complicate it with the containment devices, it's even worse.
Yeah.
So yes, the room is small enough, and I know we would all feel, instead of having that extra swing, we'd rather have an extra human in there to help us with the baby. So get rid of the swing and bargain for a human instead to come help.
Yeah. And so that may be another thing that you can talk about as far as space. Furnishings for routine care, play, and learning. We talked about this a little bit earlier. Again, the cubbies, same thing. Sometimes in toddler rooms, especially infant rooms, they have an easier time with this because they'll store all the food somewhere. They'll store all the diapers somewhere, and then they'll have the clothing and things like that. So sometimes they may have more spaces to store items, so that gives them more room. But that's not always the case. And then we see the same things with especially toddlers, but they still need enough space to be able to store all of their belongings without touching anybody else's.
And for those taller children that are starting to get those independent skills, we'd like to see that the cubbies are accessible at their height so that they can start to get their coats to outside and etc. So teaching those self-help skills. We also want to look for the child-sized chairs, which if your children are toddler age, which is the 12 months and older, we would hope that they would be sitting at tables that they can get themselves in and out of, feet touching when possible, elbows not way up here, because it's really hard to eat like that. So, right height for the tables, right height for the chairs.
So they should not be in high chairs.
They should not be in high chairs. But your older infants, if they are in high chairs, they need to have that foot support, so they know that their feet are just hanging out there in space, that they're grounded on the footrest. I mean, we should talk about in the front of the book. How many of you guys have a book? So in the front, it talks about what exactly is considered a toddler and what is considered an infant.
And there's some verbiage about
Page 7.
what if you have two kids that turn 12 months old, but they're still in the infant room, what do you have to provide for them? There's some different language about that.
So infants are age birth to 11 months. Toddlers are 12 months to 30, which I think is kind of a little different mindset.
36 now, right?
Oh yeah, it could be 36. But we do realize that developmentally, the toddler age children are often still in your infant room, and that is the safest place to be. But as we alluded to earlier, the best practice is to start to get those materials that they're gonna be seeing in the toddler room, to start experimenting and learning, keeping their brains developing and not stagnating.
So there are gonna be some indicators that you're gonna look at to see if you have to offer what kinds of things. So if you truly have just an infant room and everybody's under 11 months old, then there are some indicators, for instance, sand and water sensory play, that you don't have to have until children are 18 months.
Yeah, blocks. You can score that in a
Or something else.
art.
Art. I knew there was another one. Like, what is it?
The crowd will help us.
Yes, they will. Good job, good job. Yeah, so those things, but it will talk about once there is one child that's 13 months old,